Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Virgo, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for Taurus season, May, whatever your particular timing paradigm is at the moment. I hope you're well, and I'm using the Llewellyn Tarot for you today. Before the reading begins, if it resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's via links in the description box below. You're looking for the link that takes you to Self-Eye if you're just looking for a single extended reading. If you are interested in more of the extended content that I do, so that would include extended content for each of the signs every month, the weekly energy readings that I do, and also the Deccan walk that we're doing over there on Circle, you might want to come over to the Order of the Phoenix, which is my private community on the Circle platform. And we're doing all sorts of extraordinary things over there. The Deccan walk is turning out to be really quite something in terms of really connecting both with astrology and the tarot, and walking the sun through the year 10 degrees at a time, which is what we're doing effectively. If you join at the higher tier, you can come participate in the live classes that we run over there every month as well. So if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with that link. Right, let's flip the camera around, but let's also talk about what we're going to do here. I think you might like it, Virgo. Bearing in mind, and this is deeply influenced actually by the Deccan walk and everything that's been coming up with that at the moment, and we are in the part of the minor arcana that is that represents the sun's journey through the 5, 6 and 7 of Pentacles right now. I thought I would orient this month's readings around a couple of different points, right? So we'll start off, as we will do, I suspect, right the way through 2026, which is simply like, where are you right now? That being, I think, the most important question that you can ask yourself, particularly if you're, trying to escape the overwhelm of everything that's going on right now. Like, what is in front of you? Where are you right now? But for the second set of cards, what we're going to do is kind of really channel that 5 of Pentacles energy of we talk about that card in terms of poverty, or a fear of poverty, a fear of a lack of something. And definitely I've been leaning into the idea this month that a lot of what this period is about is if your life is to continue on exactly as it is right now, where will you be in 5 years' time, right? And spending a little bit of time kind of leaning into that feeling. What does that mean? What is that about? And are you happy with it? Because although the 5 of Pentacles is given to be, to some extent or another, at least perceived by most people as a kind of negative card, is that realistic? If it gives us the opportunity for movement and change in the now, because we can stave off whatever future we don't feel like we want, all things remaining as they are, proceeding in this fashion. Like, are you comfortable doing the same thing in 5 years' time that you're doing now, or do you want to do something else? Because here's where the movement starts to come in. And so with that in mind, then through the 6 and the 7, we're thinking about how we can take a look around and see where it's time for movement to occur. Look at the resources: time, care, effort, money, attention, love. All of these are Pentacles to my mind, and we can start moving around those. So it's a bit of problem solving, which I know that you like, Virgo, but it's also getting a little bit analytical with ourselves in terms of where we are and where we want to be. There's no indication at this point that we're going to have a very clear defined goal that we're moving towards, but certainly we can play with the idea of, do we want it to be just like it is now? Because most of us, I think, don't. And then we will close out with the second most important question you can ask yourself in 2026, and that is simply, what is the next step? That's all we're interested in at this point here. Just any movement at all, whether it's internal, external, whatever, just the next step is the only thing that really matters. So I hope that that's acceptable for you. That is what I have. Ow, I've also got a cut on my knuckle. It makes that knock a little bit uncomfortable, but never mind. So let's have a look and see where Virgo is right now, please. Because there's another thing as well. I do a meditation, or I guess you call it a meditation, before I start every single reading, and there was something that came through as clear as a fucking bell for you, Virgo, and I want to tell you what it is in a second. And it was actually stunningly Mercurial and Virgoan, if you will. There we go. I was looking for something swordy to bear out what I heard while I was doing the meditation, and there it is, the Page of Swords at the bottom of the deck. It was a slightly frustrated, almost a rally against everything around us that went like this: can we just get back to the fucking truth of things, please? Like, none of this faff, none of this frill, none of this stuff around it. Can we actually just be dealing with the truth now? And it had sort of shades of frustration about it, but it also had the I don't know, it had the quality of someone who's just actually just done now with whatever it is. So, this might be part of, you looking around and seeing what's going on in the world. It might be a bit of a response to that, but it could be a response to things that are going on in your own life too, because, between the Seven of Cups and the Ten of Wands, we've got a position that is deeply uncomfortable. And I have to say, although I was expecting the Aries season's readings to be a little bit combustible, on the whole they were all pretty much giving everybody a gold star for effort well employed, right? And Taurus season, which is much slower moving, has much less volatility associated with it, seems to be kind of smacking us in the face with these hard lines quite often. It seems to be showing up so far anyway. And with yours, it's definitely around the truth, right? The Page of Swords is an interesting card because sometimes it can talk about consciousness expansion, right? As we begin to draw in new information that we haven't really considered before. But I'm looking at the definite lack of whimsy here in this Page of Swords. He looks quite grave. He's holding a sword and a scroll in his hand, and he looks quite pensive. I'll show you his face there. The hard line for you seems to be a recognition of the fact that there's quite a lot that is overwhelming at the moment, and if we could just get down to the brass tacks of what is real, what is true, without all of this other stuff over the top, then things might actually just function a little bit more efficiently. And we like things to function efficiently, right? So we've got the Seven of Cups, which is sometimes indicative of a kind of emotional confusion or illusion. And that would definitely feed into this idea that we're looking for just the truth now, please. But we also have the Ten of Wands, which is a card of burden. And, the additional energy of the Six of Pentacles, I was only looking for one card here, but it's given me two, is like the burden of trying to keep everything balanced is actually starting to take its toll now, because it feels like, I don't know, it feels maybe like you're a bit of a salmon swimming upstream at this point, and you're like, I am doing my fucking damnedest to balance everything out in front of me. Running it through my filters and processing it and all that kind of thing. And there's just a lot of noise and a lot of effort and energy being expended in doing that, when it could just stop. That would be nice if it could just fucking stop. And at the same time, you seem to be trying to promote balance and harmony and union and all these kind of things. But I do feel with that Seven of Cups, so you're kind of wondering where this is all going. Now, obviously, it's 2026, planet Earth. So to some extent or another, I think we're all struggling with that just a little bit. But this feels like it's very, very specifically related to something that is going on in your life at the moment. Excuse me while I pick up the cards that I have just thrown on the floor. Oh, There we go. So we're going to clarify with this deck, Edmund de Lac. I think it's the Edmund de Lac Tarot. Just to get a little bit more insight here, because I don't know, this really does feel like somebody who is kind of rapidly approaching the end of their tether. And although it doesn't feel like a strop or a losing of a temper or anything like that, there's an undercurrent of frustration with it that is just like, no, that's enough. To some extent, we could say that this might perhaps relate to boundaries, right? But I like the Page of Swords as an expression of a discerning mind. I know that he is the very lowest rung of the court hierarchy of swords, right? And we might assume that discernment was a little bit more the preserve of the Queen and the King of Swords, for example. But I've used this example before. Like if I was to look out of my window here and describe to you what I see, such that you were able to kind of imagine it for yourself, what I'm not going to do is come down, right down to the level of the blades of grass and what particular shape they are and their chemical composition and things like that. That doesn't really actually tell you anything about the presentation of the scene. And so it follows then that the Page of Swords, by definition, in terms of the information that they are looking for, what they are exposing themselves to, there is actually an inbuilt high level of discernment around simply even the Page of Swords in and of himself. I think the only point where this goes off the boil a little bit is with Gemini, because Gemini is looking for as much information as possible and to shuttle it around as much as possible. The Page is a little bit more careful, and by the time the Knight has done his job and passed it on to the Queen, then she's testing for veracity, right? She's at a higher level than the Page, and so a little bit more adept at this kind of work. But it's the synthesis of these three energies working together that finally give the King what he needs to make an informed decision about what happens moving forwards. And there are so many stressors and pressures here. And although you're not in the dark, and this is a very interesting quality about the Seven of Cups in the Llewellyn Tarot, you're not exactly in the dark. You can kind of see what's in all of the cups. But at the same time, there is a question of whether it's easy to see what the consequences of plucking any one of those cups from their position might actually bring for you in the future. So that's making everything internally a little bit messy, because all earth signs like to follow a fairly linear path on things, right? So that there's a predictability, a reliability, a resourcefulness that we find within earth that really appreciates structure and things moving in a structured fashion. We don't have that in 2026. We certainly don't have that in May 2026, right? So there's all of this which you are internally battling. And then there are the external expressions of it as well. Like I said, trying to keep everything together, trying to keep everything balanced. But this feels like it's creating more work for you than you are comfortable with right now. To put it mildly, like you feel really burdened by all of this. And if it hasn't come quite to a head yet, I do feel like it's coming to a head soon. Now, I've got the Edmund de Lac, like I said. Let's pull a card for this Seven of Cups. That's not one card, that's two. So we've got the Four of Swords on its side, and we've got the Nine of Swords on its side. Again, somewhat of a balancing act here. You've got kind of 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You're kind of not eyeball to eyeball with all the cups, but certainly able to see what's in them. So we've got that kind of not quite in contact with the cups, but certainly we can see what's in them. Then we're not quite taking a break, not quite taking a step back. Neither are we absolutely throwing ourselves into it. And at the same time, it feels like one's mental faculties are being tested, and we're not quite lapsing into depression, but neither are we full of the joys of fucking spring right now either. It's like everything is hard here. And it's particularly hard on the mind and the heart for you. And I think it's because of this balancing that you're trying to do, which feels to me like it is for the benefit of other people too. I mean, it could well be that you are gaining some sort of benefit from the act of that, right? And we would see why, right? You're not sliding one way or the other. But at the same time, you seem to be doing the heavy lifting for people around you too. And it's starting to take its toll, right? And this hard line that you're drawing in the sand, which is like, can we just get back to facts and truth and what is real? I think it's a very necessary expression of something that needs to be said in your environment, to people around you, because you're kind of asserting a boundary here. You're like, my head is full, my emotions are full, not necessarily in the best way, but they're just complex and maybe a little overwhelming at the moment, and it would be easier to concentrate on what is real if we had a little less of this fucking noise around everything. Tell me about the Six of Pentacles and Ten of Wands, please. Why is this here? Right, we've got the Fool in reverse, and we've got the Lover's card showing up again for the second time. So we've got, you know, Gemini energy is being indicated twice, no less, as well. And what planet have we just had move into Gemini? It's Uranus. Now, although Uranus doesn't have an overt attachment to Virgo exactly, in some astrological philosophies, Uranus is understood to be the higher expression of the higher echelon of Mercury. So although it's a kind of tangential association, at the same time there is something here that connects you as a sign to the Uranian experience. And Uranus is about breakthrough, truth, rebellion, all these kind of things, right? And it feels like there's a pressurized point that you are arriving at. Maybe even this is the rupture for you right now. Like, I'm just fucking done. Here is the line. Either communicate to me in facts that I can work with, or don't. And we have the Judgment card at the bottom of the deck. Now that's very interesting, not least because the Judgment card relates to either the act of judgment or feeling judged, or the process of judgment, which is to say making a decision about something. I've known a lot of Virgos over the year, and your minds are never still. They're always moving, they're always looking for the next thing. That pursuit of perfection doesn't just drop into, perfection doesn't drop into people's laps, right? It has to be worked for, it has to be ground away at. And even you, with your certainly expansive capacity for detail. Well, maybe this is probably where the level of frustration is coming from, right? It is impossible to attend to the detail because you're being stretched so thin right now. This is there's something's got to give here, Virgo. And it's coming along right at the right time, in terms of what we were talking about earlier, being like, do you want to be where you are right now in 5 years' time? Even if everything's going swimmingly, do you want to be right here, right now? And if the spectre of being right here, right now, in 5 years' time is something that feels distasteful to you, then here we've got some redundancy, we've got some capacity to change things. But what does that look like for you? Let's flip those back in there. What this looks like for Virgo, please. Ace of Wands. Woo. Three of Swords reversed. Wow. Okay. And the Magician with the Two of Cups. So I feel like to some extent this is about taking a hard line with people for you, Virgo. Two of Cups at the bottom of the deck is definitely you and other people. Now, generally speaking, that Two of Cups represents a fairly close relationship, because for me, when you really drill into the meaning of this card, it's talking about intimacy, right? So we're not talking about you necessarily and the world at large, but we are talking about you and very specific people in your life, who, whether it's a case of they're not pulling their weight, or whether there's a certain amount of like idleness going on, or whether they're just doing a lot of talking, a lot of escapism, a lot of, fantasy stuff, and nothing's actually moving forwards. Either way, I think you've reached capacity. And I think from this point on, it's about communicating that efficiently to the people around you. With the Ace of Wands here, we have some sort of change in what we are quite literally physically doing. The Wand suit is all about experience, it's about movement, and it's about the act of living. It's about vibrancy and passion and creativity and all those kind of things that I feel that for you have been incredibly stifled recently. Now, I don't think that you would be, isolated in your experience of not feeling particularly creative when there's so much pressure going on here. But it does seem to have touched you in a way that actually is all contributing to the frustration as well. It's like there isn't any room for me to be creative while I am fielding all of this. And it feels like you're trying to field all things for all people, particularly in terms of keeping everybody else on a level. And there's nothing left over for you, Virgo. Not even from you is there anything left over from you. And so we come to the very real realization that things have to change, which is to say, if you want them to change, you have to change them. The Ace of Wands is like a change in behavior, sure, but it's an initiation of a new way that you want things to go. Because if Virgo 2030 wants to be doing literally anything other than what Virgo 2026 is doing, there are changes that have to happen now, and they have to happen in terms of the what you put up with from other people. Again, the Two of Wands is at its very mildest, we could say it's renegotiating boundaries. But a more kind of hard line is, look, people, I've actually had a fuck enough of this. Like, this needs to change right now, because you're burning yourself out, Virgo. Now, sometimes there are periods in our life where we work harder than others. It's just part of being alive, right? But hitting the line with ourselves, or hitting a point of such burden that we fear that we may break, should be a sign for us that we need to perform some sort of reset on our lives somewhere, right? And the only person who has the capacity to do that is us. But sometimes when we get locked into a way of being, a way of thinking, and particularly if we are supporting a lot of people around us, and there doesn't feel like there's much of an alternative to that, it can be very difficult to know how to shift things around, how to change them. Now, this Three of Swords is in the reverse, and I really, really love this, actually. I have a particular love for this version of the Three of Swords in the Llewellyn, not least because rather than depicting swords going through the heart, in that rather uncomfortable scene of steel entering flesh and blood and muscle, all that kind of thing, what we have here is the swords rammed into the ground. And this girl is sat here in front of one of them, with the implication being at some point she can stand up and walk away from that. She doesn't have to carry that with her. There's quite an aged quality to this card as well, so that sometimes it gives the impression that whatever the issue is right now, it is something that's kind of historical. In terms of how that would relate to you, it's not about the historical quality of the work that you're doing, but rather the way in which you have assumed it is your job to do all of these things, right? Very service oriented. Virgo, and extremely willing to work hard, but not necessarily having an off switch. Now, for me, the Ace of Wands and the Three of Swords in reverse here are speaking to Virgo consciously cultivating an off switch for themselves, because they are recognizing within their body that things are too much right now. So, regardless of whether you are actually physically working very hard every day, and I think some of you might be doing a little bit more than you ideally would like to, there's certainly a sense that mentally, spiritually, emotionally, there's a lot of hard work going on there. And we know how exhausting that can be, right? When you're trying to keep everything up for everyone. It's time for a shift. It's time for a change. And it doesn't need necessarily to be a confrontational thing. Oddly enough, I feel like there's an energy that's emanating from these cards here that suggests that were it efficiently and kindly brought to people's attention that you are burning yourself out, that actually people would be quite shocked and look for ways to alleviate your burden somewhat. But the problem is that you tend to suffer in silence. And maybe this is where the issue is. I mean, we'll look into it in a minute in the looking at the next step. But this Magician on its side, it's not exactly a sticking point. Like the Magician, because the Magician is the combination of one's will upon all the new energy that is represented by the aces, right? And it's putting those together in some sort of combination that allows us to manifest a vision. Now, he's not here, he's on his side, right? So he's not here in his fullest expression, let's put it that way. He's on his side, but it feels like he's there, he's just waiting for you to take advantage of him, right? He's asking you to use his energy to channel him into how you would like things to be, preferentially over what you currently have right now. And that would draw in the energy of the Judgment card very, very strongly at this point, right? But he's not quite there yet. So let's see what's acting as the impediment to the... I know what it is, actually, Virgo. I know entirely what it is. It's... Ooh, there's the Tower and the Magician at the bottom of the deck again. There is part of you... Don't be offended. There is part of you that... And it might be a very small part, that kind of enjoys the strain. Now, I know that's quite a controversial thing to say, but I have got my Saturn and Jupiter in Virgo, right? So I'm kind of... And recognise these different parts of us that sometimes try and sabotage what our conscious mind is trying to achieve, right? There is the fulfilment of the work ethic par excellence beyond anybody else, right? Feats of endurance and all that kind of thing. And there is a small part of you that is quite comfortable with things being the way that they are. But probably the other 98% of you is like, nah, I'm at the end of my fucking tether here. So we've got the Magician twice, upright and on his side, and we've got the Tower. We've got the energy of breakthrough, rupture, a kind of unexpected truth emerging, maybe unexpected events, whatever, however you want to interpret it. And I feel like the breakthroughs here for you during this period are not necessarily in a sudden alleviation of circumstance that seems to come from nowhere, but it is more about the actually articulating the fact that you are suffering, Virgo, and that it doesn't have to be like this. Like, you can draw attention to this fact with the people around you. And once it's been pointed out to them, they're like, oh, goodness, apologies, Virgo, let us assist. But if you're waiting for people to notice, you're skipping a very important step, which is quite funny for a Mercury-ruled sign such as yourself, which is you have to articulate that outside of yourself, right? Now, it could well be, with the Magician on his side at the moment, that there is some sort of there's some sort of evolution of you, some sort of change that's happening within you that actually says a kind of reality that you would have manifested for yourself 6 months ago actually is no longer in alignment with who you are. And it's the who am I now versus who I was 6 months ago that might contain the secret of what is actually trying to shift here. But you've got to articulate it. And I think just that willingness to articulate it in a fair and reasonable, measured way, dealing in truth, not in, escapism or any of the other stuff that people around you seem to be dealing with at the moment. Just this is what it is the thing that breaks the tension for you, maybe even breaks the burden for you. I have no idea if that's my dogs or whether that's somebody else's dogs. Or that place in between, which is the wild dogs that just wander around Bulgaria, owned by no one. Anyway, let's have a look and see what the next step is for you, please, Virgo. What's going on here? What do we need to know? So, we've got the Ten of Cups. Lovely. We've got the Page of Cups. Virgo. All right, we've got the Fool and the Four of Wands and the Hanged Man. This is interesting, right? So let's put these round like that. So the skipped step is that is your assumption that your attention to detail is shared by other people. I think I'm here to tell you that it is not. But the other interesting thing about this is that you are literally standing on the doorstep of some really quite dramatic change here. We can see it in the Ten of Cups, which, although it is a beautiful card of the happy there hereafter and all that sort of stuff, actually indicates a change moment within the emotional environment for you, right? So whatever, for whom you have been trying to keep things up and all that sort of stuff, it can't be continued the way that it has been. And here we have the ending of the Ten of Cups, right? But the bridge between the completion of the Ten of Cups, the end of the state as it is so far, and the rebirth into something else, which would be the Fool and the Four of Wands, has to come by way of the Page of Cups, which is asking not only for you to articulate how you are feeling, but also to soften a little bit. But here's the thing, I don't think you need to work at that too hard, because this Hanged Man is showing you the other side of the coin. Now, you're very detail focused, you're very detail oriented. Things that are totally obvious to you aren't necessarily obvious to other people. They need it gently pointing out. And there may be some frustration and even a little bit of resentment or bitterness around the fact that other people don't notice this. But do we really want the entire world to be made of Virgos? Virgo. I'm asking you this legitimately. Yeah, you might say, yes, everything would be more efficient and would run on time and would be proper and all that kind of thing. But, I think a healthy balance is possibly more important. So if the people around you are not capable of seeing this off their own back, then gentle attention needs to be drawn to it. But there's something in the willingness to see things from other people's perspective that actually makes your message a little less abrupt and hardline than it could be, and offers you an opportunity to feel your way into a different way of doing things too. Because the frustration melts away when you realise that this is something that people don't really have any control over, and just a few choice words from you, delivered kindly, could actually change the entirety of your reality. And ultimately, that's actually what you want. That's what you're working towards. It's here because it's present and it's possible. It's potentialized, but it's possible. But you have to choose it. And from that point on, we can start a new cycle, and we can begin creating something that feels mutually supportive. And definitely, all of this seems very much oriented around the home environment for you, Virgo, which is really interesting. I'm not really seeing much indication that it's, a work situation or something like that. It feels quite close to home. And we know that environment is incredibly important to Virgo. So if the environment is not supporting, right, like change things around in the environment. And if it's not something that you can physically change yourself, then speaking the words out loud, being vulnerable enough to say, yo, hello people, which has has an interesting dimension of growth associated with it anyway for you, Virgo. I think you might be surprised how quickly things change, how rapidly things change. But it's like it's shaking off this almost the word that keeps coming to mind is martyr, but I don't like that word because I don't think it really encapsulates the feeling exactly, right? It's much more hands-on, and it's much busier than that, and it's very practical. So it's not really, Pisces is quite a martyry kind of energy. Virgo considerably less so. But it's like working hard is not going to fix this. And it could well be that part of what comes out from this change in perspective here, allowing yourself to articulate what you're feeling, even if that feeling is kind of like, do you know what, I'm just really overwhelmed and I don't really know where I'm going or what I'm doing, right? In that moment, like that kind of honesty that you're craving, the hard line that you draw around all the noise and everything, you're actually doing that for yourself. You're kind of setting the boundary for the world around you. I don't know, this is really, really interesting, Virgo. And I love how it situates it actually within your control, which I approve of. But, waiting for people to notice is going to be like that meme, with the guy just sat with his hands in his lap staring at the distance, sat on a park bench. It's like, me waiting for whatever it is. Or, a skeleton just sat on a bench like this, waiting for something. Well, this used to be like Game of Thrones season 7 or something like that. When the memes were going around, that's the thing that I'm thinking of. It's like you have the power to control and to influence the outcome here, and it's not the way that you think it should be. And it just takes a moment of vulnerability and honesty from you to change everything that you're experiencing and get some of that back, as well as shifting what you're doing in the day-to-day and stopping you from feeling so burdened, which can only be a good thing, I think. So I'm going to leave it here because I've been going on for ages. And I'm going to the extended now to go do that. So if you would like to join me over there, you're very welcome to do so. As I said at the top of the video, you can do that on Selfie or you can do that on Circle. I would be quite actually delighted to see you in either place, wherever you tip up. So other than that, I'm not going to lie, I actually kind of like how this is showing up for you, Virgo. I mean, there's a irritation in the moment, in the noticing, but then there's something really quite evolved in the execution of this, and it's not abrasive to you or to other people, and I like that. It's actually quite refined. So anyway, know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.